Captain Deho stared at the navigation screen and felt his stomach drop. This was not Kepler 442b. This was definitely not the empty space around their target planet. Instead, massive metal structures stretched in every direction, glowing with lights that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. "Mina," he said slowly to his navigator. "Where exactly are we?" Mina looked pale as she checked her instruments for the third time. "I don't know, Captain. The jump calculations were perfect. We should be near our colony planet, but," she gestured helplessly at the view screen, "this is somewhere completely different." The UES determination was humanity's first serious attempt at deep space colonization. Deho had been chosen to lead 200 colonists to a new world, and their experimental faster-than-light drive was supposed to make the journey in just 3 months. Instead, they had apparently jumped thousands of light-years off course and landed in the middle of what looked like the biggest space station anyone had ever imagined. "Captain," called Jin-A from the science station, "I'm reading massive life signs, hundreds of different species. This isn't just a space station. It's like a city in space." Tae-jin, the chief engineer, was frantically working at his console. "Sir, our jump drive is completely drained. It'll take at least a week to recharge, and that's if nothing goes wrong." "So, we're stuck here," Deho said. It wasn't really a question. "Looks like it," Tae-jin replied. Hyun-woo suddenly looked up from his communication station. "Captain, I'm getting signals. Lots of them. It's like radio chatter, but from dozens of different sources. And some of it," he paused, looking confused. "Some of it almost sounds like it might be translatable." So Young, their cultural expert, moved to look over his shoulder. "Can you clean up the signals?" "Working on it," Hyun-woo said, his fingers dancing over the controls. Before anyone could say anything else, the ship shuddered. Red lights began flashing across Tae-jin's engineering station. "What's happening?" Deho demanded. "The power systems are trying to auto-shutdown after the jump," Tae-jin explained, sweat beading on his forehead. "It's normal, but I need to manually override some systems or we'll lose life support." "Do it." Tae-jin's hands moved quickly across his controls. Too quickly. His finger slipped, and instead of hitting the life support override, he activated the mining laser array they had brought for the colony. The mining lasers were designed to carve through rock and metal to help build their new settlement. They were powerful, precise, and absolutely not meant to be used near alien space stations. The beams lanced out from the determination and began cutting into the hull of the massive structure around them. But instead of random cuts, the ship's computer, still running on automatic systems, began following a pattern it found in its memory banks. "Shut it down," Deho shouted. "I'm trying," Tae-jin yelled back. By the time he managed to cut power to the lasers, they had carved 5 enormous letters into the space station's hull. Each letter was nearly 3 kilometers tall and glowed red-hot against the alien metal. The letters spelled HELLO. "Oh no," Mina whispered. "Oh yes," said a new voice. Everyone turned to stare at Hyun-woo, who was now wearing a headset and looking very surprised. "I've got translation working," he said weakly. "And they want to talk." The main view screen flickered and suddenly showed the face of something that definitely wasn't human. It looked like it was made of crystal, with facets that reflected light in rainbow patterns. When it spoke, the words came through in perfect, if slightly formal, Korean. "Greetings, unknown vessel," the being said. "I am Administrator Veltar of Station Theta Prime, a trade hub of the Zephyrian Galactic Empire. Your dramatic arrival has been noted. Please state your species, origin, and purpose." Deho stepped forward, trying to look more confident than he felt. "I am Captain Deho of the Earthship Determination. We are humans from the planet Earth, and we seem to be lost." Veltar's crystalline features shifted in what might have been surprise. "Earth is not in our star charts. Are you from beyond the outer rim?" "We're from the Milky Way galaxy," Jin-A said, moving to stand beside her captain. "Sol system, 3rd planet." Now Veltar definitely looked surprised. Several other faces appeared. On the screen, beings of different shapes and colors all staring at the humans with what seemed like amazement. "The Milky Way?" Veltar repeated. But that's where we are. Sol system. Let me check our charts. There was a pause. Impossible. Our charts show the Sol system as empty except for a young star and several lifeless planets. How old are your charts? So Young asked. The last survey was conducted approximately 50,000 of your years ago, Veltar replied. Well, said Deho, we've been busy since then. The screen was quiet for a moment. Then one of the other aliens, a creature that looked somewhat like a large blue octopus, began making sounds that the translator identified as laughter. 50,000 years, the octopus being said. A newborn species, and they carved their greeting into our station hull before even saying hello. It was an accident, Tajin said quickly. An accident that carved letters 3 kilometers high? Another voice asked. This one belonged to something that looked like a walking tree. Our engineer has very good aim, Deho said dryly. More laughter came through the translator. Veltar raised what might have been a hand for silence. Captain Deho, the administrator said, your species is completely unknown to our empire. This presents certain complications. However, you have already made quite an impression. The crystalline being paused. Would you be willing to come aboard the station? We have much to discuss. Genie stepped forward before Deho could answer. What kind of empire are we talking about here? How many species? How many worlds? The Rentas. Zephyrian Galactic Empire encompasses approximately 12,000 inhabited worlds across 3 galactic spiral arms, Veltar replied. We are home to 847 different intelligent species, all living in peaceful cooperation under imperial law. And you just, invite new species to join? So Young asked. The process is somewhat more complex than that, Veltar said carefully. There are protocols, evaluations, a great deal of paperwork. How much paperwork? Mina asked. Approximately 18,000 forms, submitted in triplicate, with supporting documentation. The humans looked at each other. Then Gina smiled brightly and said, That sounds great, when do we start? Veltar's crystalline face somehow managed to look stunned. You wish to begin the application process? Without consulting your government? Without extended deliberation? Our government is 50,000 light years away, Deho pointed out. And we're here now. Besides, he gestured at the word hello still glowing on the station's hull. We've already made our introduction. This is highly irregular, Veltar said. We're good at irregular, Hyunwoo said cheerfully. Very well, the administrator said, sounding like someone who had just agreed to jump off a very high cliff. Please dock at Bay 94. Welcome, humans, to the Zephyrian Galactic Empire. As the communication ended, the crew of the Determination looked at each other. So, said Taejin, we came out here to start a colony on one planet, and instead we accidentally joined a galactic empire. Pretty much, Deho agreed. Cool, said Jin'e. And with that simple word, humanity began its career as the galaxy's most unpredictable new member. 3 days after their arrival, Deho was beginning to understand why some species might take 200 years to join the Zephyrian Empire. The paperwork was incredible. He sat in what Veltar had called a comfortable waiting area on processing station, Gamma 7, staring at a stack of forms that reached his waist. Each form had to be filled out in triplicate, signed by appropriate authorities, and cross-referenced with 17 different databases. The being in charge of their case was named Mordus, and he looked like a giant slug made of purple jelly. He moved very slowly, spoke even more slowly, and seemed to take great pride in following every single rule exactly as it was written. Form 4847B requires your species' complete historical record, Mordus said in a voice like thick honey. Please include all major wars, cultural developments, and technological advances for the past 10,000 years. We only have about 5,000 years of recorded history, Deho explained, and most of that is, well, it's complicated. Incomplete historical records, Mordus noted, making a mark on his own form. This will require additional documentation from your homeworld. which is 50,000 light-years away, Mina pointed out. Form 2156C covers species with distant homeworlds, Mortis replied without looking up. You will need to submit a formal request for extended documentation retrieval. Please allow 50 to 100 years for processing. Hyunwoo looked up from where he was trying to figure out how to describe Earth's internet to a computer system that had never heard of cats or memes. Did he just say 50 to 100 years? Standard processing time for distant species. Mortis. Confirmed. What if we just filled out the forms faster? So, Young asked. Mortis looked horrified. Madam, these forms have been carefully designed over thousands of years. Each question serves a vital purpose. Rushing through them would be inappropriate. While Mortis explained the historical importance of Form 7 Item 932A, Species Cultural, Music Preferences, Subsection Rhythmic Instruments, Hyunwoo was getting bored. He had always been good with computers, and the station's network had been very helpful in translating languages. He wondered what else it could do. Hey, he whispered to Jinhee. Want to see something cool? Jinhee looked up from where she was, trying to explain why humans had both dogs and cats as pets. What kind of cool? I might have figured out how to access the station's main computer network. Is that legal? I'm not breaking anything, just looking around. What Hyunwoo found, when he looked around, was fascinating. The Zephyrian Empire's computer network was huge, but it was also very old and not very well protected. It seemed like most species were so respectful of rules that nobody had ever tried to hack into it. The Empire's entire bureaucratic system ran on computers that were older than human civilization, and they all shared information through networks that were surprisingly easy to navigate if you knew what you were doing. Look at this, Hyunwoo said, showing Jinhee his screen. The whole application process is just a really big computer program. It asks questions, checks your answers against databases, and then approves or denies your application. So, what if someone just answered all the questions really fast? Jinhee looked around to make sure Mortis wasn't listening. The slug being was still explaining form numbering systems to Tae-jin, who looked like he was falling asleep. How fast? She asked. Hyunwoo's fingers were already dancing over his portable computer, which he had connected to the station's network. Let's find out. The application program was actually pretty straightforward once you got past all the formal language. It wanted to know if humans were peaceful, mostly, intelligent, definitely, and able to follow galactic laws, probably. It asked about their technology, their culture, and their history. Hyunwoo answered the questions as honestly as he could, which sometimes meant choosing the closest available option from multiple choice lists that clearly hadn't been updated in thousands of years. Question 1, 2, and 47. Does your species engage in ritualistic consumption of other intelligent beings? He read aloud. That's a no, Jinhee said. Question 1, 2, 48. Does your species worship giant space whales? Also no. Question 1, 2, 49. Has your species ever successfully negotiated a peace treaty with sentient crystals? No, but we're willing to learn. It took Hyunwoo exactly 17 minutes to complete all 18,000 forms. The computer system, which had probably never processed an application that quickly in its entire existence, immediately approved humanity's membership in the Zephyrian Empire. Congratulations, appeared on his screen. Your species has been accepted for full membership. Welcome to the Empire. Said Jinhee. Should you tell the others? Before Hyunwoo could answer, alarms began sounding all over the station. Lights flashed, and Mortis made a sound like a deflating balloon. What is happening? The bureaucrat wailed, looking at his own computer screen, which was flashing the same congratulatory message. I think we just got accepted, Hyunwoo said weakly. Impossible. The process takes a minimum of 200 years. There are protocols, procedures, review boards. Veltar's voice came over the station's communication system. All personnel to emergency stations. We have a situation in Processing Bay Gamma 7. Within minutes, Veltar arrived with what looked like a small army of official-looking beings from various species. They all seemed very upset. What? Veltar asked in a dangerously calm voice. Did you do? I filled out the forms, Hyunwoo said. All of them? Yes. In 17 minutes? Yes. That is impossible. Apparently not, Daeho said, standing up from his own pile of paperwork. So what happens now? Veltar looked at the other officials who were all talking at once in different languages. The translator was having trouble keeping up, but Daeho caught words like unprecedented, violation, and disaster. Well, Veltar said finally, technically, your species is now a full member of the Zephyrian Empire. Great, said So-young. What does that mean exactly? It means, said a new voice, that you have just become citizens of the oldest continuous government in the galaxy. Everyone turned to see a tall, elegant being in formal robes. It had pale blue skin and silver eyes, and when it moved it seemed to glide rather than walk. I am Imperial Liaison Cathara, the being said. I have been sent by the High Council to manage this situation. What situation? Jin'e asked. We just joined your empire. Isn't that good? Child, Cathara said gently. In the past 10,000 years, exactly 23 species have been granted membership in the empire. The process typically takes between 200 and 500 years. It involves extensive cultural exchange, careful evaluation, and gradual integration. That sounds really slow, Taejin said. It is designed to be thorough. But we're already members now, right? Daeho asked. Cathara sighed, a sound like wind through crystal chimes. Yes, Captain. According to Imperial law, your species is now officially part of the Empire. However, no one is quite sure what to do with you. Why not? Mina asked. Because, Mortis said, still sounding like he was in shock, in 400 years of processing applications, I have never seen anyone simply finish. Most species, Cathara explained, use the application process as a way to gradually learn about the Empire and decide if they truly want to join. It is meant to be a time of careful consideration. We considered it, So-young said. It took us about 5 minutes. 5 minutes, Cathara repeated. Maybe 10, Daeho admitted. The Imperial liaison looked at the humans for a long moment. Then, to everyone's surprise, she began to laugh. You know, she said, this might be exactly what the Empire needs. Things have been rather predictable lately. So what happens now? Jin'e asked. Now, Cathara said, we figure out what to do with the first species in galactic history to join the Empire by accident, and then finish all the paperwork before anyone could stop them. Should we apologize? Hyunwoo asked. Oh no, Cathara said, smiling. I think this is going to be very interesting. General Kexthar was not happy. In his 300 years of military service, he had never encountered a problem quite like the humans. The general belonged to a species called the Tharkons, 8-foot-tall warriors with gray skin and 4 arms, each capable of wielding a different weapon. His people had earned their place in the Empire through strength, honor, and careful military strategy. They understood respect, hierarchy, and the proper way to conduct warfare. Humans, apparently, understood none of these things. Let me understand this correctly, Kexathar said, pacing back and forth in his command center. These humans have been members of the Empire for exactly 1 week, and in that time they have… What? His aide, a nervous bird-like creature named Piptel, read from his report. They have reorganized the filing system on Processing Station Gamma 7, started a small business selling something called coffee to 17 different species, and somehow fixed the station's waste recycling system that has been broken for 200 years. And their engineer Taejin has volunteered to repair every broken machine on the station, for free. As a welcome to the neighborhood gesture, Kexthar growled, a sound like rocks grinding together. What kind of species offers free repairs to strangers? Unknown, sir, but the station administrator, Veltar, says efficiency has improved by 340% since they arrived. That's not the problem, Piptel. The problem is that we don't know anything about their military capabilities. Are they warriors? Are they weak? Are they a threat? The truth was, Kexthar was worried. The Empire had been peaceful for thousands of years, but that peace was maintained by the strength of the Stellar Guard. Every member species had been carefully evaluated for their military potential before joining, but the humans had bypassed that evaluation entirely. "Sir," Piptel said carefully, "perhaps we could invite them to observe our training exercises. It would give us a chance to study them while showing them proper military protocol." Kexthar considered this. Yes, that's exactly what we'll do. Send a message to their captain, Deho. Tell him he's invited to witness a demonstration of Imperial military power. 2 days later, Deho and his crew arrived at Military Station Beta Prime to watch what Kexthar had described as a routine training exercise. The station was enormous, built like a fortress in space with massive weapons arrays and docking bays that could hold entire fleets. "Wow," said Jinne, staring out at the rows of Imperial warships. "These guys don't mess around." "Each of those ships could probably destroy our entire fleet back on Earth," Tejan observed. "Good thing we're friends now," Mina said. General Kexthar met them in the observation deck, along with several other high-ranking military officers from different species. The general was even more impressive in person. He towered over them by humans, and his 4 arms made him look like he could fight an entire army by himself. "Captain Deho," Kexthar said, his voice like controlled thunder. "Welcome to Beta Prime. Today you will observe how the Stellar Guard maintains order in the galaxy." "Thank you for inviting us," Deho replied. "We're always interested in learning how things work." The exercise was supposed to be a simple demonstration of fleet tactics. One group of ships would play the role of pirates, while another group would hunt them down and capture them. It was a scenario the Stellar Guard had practiced thousands of times. "The key to space combat," Kexthar explained as the ships moved into position, "is discipline, coordination, and overwhelming force. Watch how our commanders use proper formation, flying, and tactical superiority to defeat their enemies." The exercise began exactly as planned. The pirate ships tried to hide among some asteroids while the guard ships searched for them using standard search patterns. Everything proceeded according to centuries of established military doctrine. "Very impressive," Deho said politely. "This is how civilized species conduct warfare," Kexthar said with pride. "It's very organized," So Young added. "What would humans do differently?" asked one of the other officers, a snake-like being with jeweled scales. The humans looked at each other. "Well," Mina said slowly, "we probably wouldn't hide in the asteroids." "Why not? It's excellent cover." "Because that's where everyone expects you to hide," Hyunwoo explained. "We'd probably do something else." "Such as?" "Maybe pretend to be a merchant ship," Jinne suggested. "Or broadcast a distress signal to draw the hunters close, then surprise them. Or just ask them nicely to surrender," So Young added. The military officers looked confused. "Ask them to surrender before fighting? Sure. Maybe they don't really want to fight, maybe they're just having a bad day." Kexthar made a noise that might have been laughter or disgust. "Captain Deho, would your species be interested in a small demonstration?" "What kind of demonstration?" "A war game. Your ship against one of our patrol squadrons. Nothing serious, just to see how humans approach combat." Deho looked at his crew. They all seemed interested. "What are the rules?" he asked. "Simple. You try to complete a mission while our ships try to stop you. Non-lethal weapons only, of course." "What's the mission?" Kexthar smiled, showing teeth like sword blades. "Reach the command ship and deliver a message. Should be impossible for one small vessel against a full squadron." "Sounds fun," Deho said. An hour later, the Determination faced off against 12 Imperial patrol ships, each one larger and better armed than the human vessel. General Kexthar and his officers watched from the observation deck, expecting to see a quick demonstration of proper military tactics. Instead, they got their first real lesson in human warfare. "Attention Imperial ships," Hyunwoo broadcast on all frequencies. This is Captain Day-Ho of the Earthship Determination. We're here to deliver a message to your command ship. We come in peace, and we've brought gifts. Gifts? The Imperial Squadron leader replied, clearly confused. Oh yes, we have Earth music, food recipes, and some really interesting stories about our homeworld. Would you like to hear some Earth music while we fly over to your commander? This is not how war games work, the squadron leader said. Who said anything about war? Day-Ho asked cheerfully. We're just delivering a message. Between friends. While this conversation was happening, Tae-Jin had quietly modified their mining lasers to fire harmless but very bright rainbow-colored beams instead of cutting lasers. Mina, take us toward the command ship, Day-Ho ordered. Nice and slow, let's not alarm anyone. The Imperial ships moved to intercept them, but they seemed unsure what to do. The humans weren't acting like enemies. They were acting like tourists, on a sightseeing trip. Unknown human ship, you are ordered to stop and surrender, the squadron leader announced. We don't want to surrender, Hyunwoo replied. We want to share Earth music. Here's a song called Dancing Queen by a group called ABBA. As disco music filled the communication channels, the Determination suddenly accelerated and began performing what could only be described as dance moves in space, spinning, diving and weaving between the Imperial ships, while Tae-Jin's rainbow lasers painted pretty colors across everyone's hulls. What are they doing? Kexthar demanded. I believe, sir, Piptel said weakly. They are dancing? Ships do not dance, but apparently human ships did. The Determination spun through the Imperial formation like it was performing in a space ballet, dodging return fire that seemed somehow too slow to catch them. How are they moving like that? One of the Imperial pilots asked over the radio. We're following the music, Hyunwoo explained. Haven't you ever danced before? It's fun. Within 10 minutes, the Determination had reached the command ship. Jinnie, wearing a spacesuit and carrying what appeared to be a picnic basket, managed to board the Imperial vessel and personally deliver her message to the very confused commander. The message read, Thank you for the fun game. Here are some Earth cookies and our recipe for chocolate chip pancakes. We hope we can be friends. The humans. General Kexthar stared at the tactical display in complete silence for a long moment. Sir? Piptel asked carefully. They won. Kexthar said slowly. Yes, sir. With dancing? Yes, sir. And cookies? Yes, sir. Kexthar was quiet for another moment. Then, to everyone's surprise, he began to laugh, a deep rumbling sound that shook the entire observation deck. Piptel, he said, send a message to the High Council. Tell them we need to discuss a formal military alliance with the humans. Sir? But they don't fight properly. They don't follow any established tactics. They dance. Exactly, Kexthar grinned. Any enemy we face will be just as confused as we were. I want these humans on our side. As the war game officially ended, Day-Ho received a message from the Imperial command ship. Recipe received and greatly appreciated. Request permission to learn the Dancing Queen maneuver for our own pilots. Permission granted, Day-Ho replied. We'd be happy to teach anyone who wants to learn. And that was how humanity accidentally became the Empire's newest military allies by treating a war game like a dance party. Emperor Zarthul had ruled the Zephyrian Empire for 500 years, and in all that time he had never felt the kind of cold fear that gripped him now. The Emperor was tall and graceful, with pale silver skin that glowed faintly in the light. His species, the Zephyrians, were ancient and wise, known throughout the galaxy for their calm wisdom and long-term thinking. They rarely panicked about anything, but the reports coming in from the Outer Rim were enough to terrify anyone. How? Many ships? He asked his intelligence chief, a multi-eyed being named Sector. At least 10,000, Your Majesty, possibly more. They appeared out of the void 3 days ago and have already consumed 17 outer colonies. Consumed? Completely. The planets are still there, but they're empty. No life, no structures. Nothing but bare rock. The Emperor closed his eyes. He was old enough to remember the stories, legends that most of the younger species thought were just myths. But Zarthul knew better. "The Devourer swarm," he whispered. "Yes, Your Majesty. After 10,000 years they have returned." Within hours the High Council was assembled in the great chamber at the heart of the imperial capital. Representatives from every major species sat in worried clusters, their translators working overtime as dozens of languages filled the air with concerned chatter. The chamber was a massive sphere, with seats arranged so that every delegate could see every other delegate. At the center, floating on a platform of pure energy, stood the Emperor himself. "My friends," Zarthul began, his voice carrying clearly to every corner of the chamber, "we face the return of our oldest enemy. The Devourer swarm has emerged from the dark space beyond our borders, and they bring with them 10,000 years of evolution and hunger." A murmur of fear rippled through the assembly. Many of the younger species had never heard of the Devourers, but the older races remembered. They remembered the long war, the billions of lives lost, and the desperate final battle that had driven the swarm into the empty space between galaxies. General Kexthar stood up from his seat. "Your Majesty, the Stellar Guard stands ready. Our fleets are already moving to intercept them." "With respect, General," said an elderly being that looked like a walking tree, "our fleets failed to stop them 10,000 years ago. What makes you think we can succeed now?" "We have better technology," Kexthar replied. "Better weapons, better ships, and they have had 10,000 years to evolve," the tree being countered. "Early reports suggest their bioships are more advanced than anything we've ever seen." The debate that followed was heated, but not hopeful. Every military strategy anyone could think of had been tried before during the Long War. Massive fleet, battles, surprise attacks, defensive stations. Nothing had worked. The Devourers had only been stopped when they mysteriously retreated on their own, disappearing into the void between galaxies. "Perhaps," suggested a crystalline being similar, "to Veltar, we should consider evacuation. Move our populations away from the invasion route." "And go where?" demanded a representative of the warrior caste hegemony. "The swarm consumed entire star systems last time. Running will only delay the inevitable." As the arguments grew louder and more desperate, a new voice spoke up from the back of the chamber. "Excuse me, but has anyone tried just talking to them?" The entire High Council fell silent. Everyone turned to look at the speaker, Captain De Ho of the humans, who was sitting in the newest section of seats that had been hastily installed for Earth's representatives. "I'm sorry," said the Emperor carefully. "Did you suggest talking to the Devourer swarm?" "Well, yes," De Ho said, standing up. He looked very small compared to most of the other delegates, but his voice was clear and confident. "I mean, we call them Devourers, but do we actually know why they consume planets? Maybe they're just hungry. Maybe they don't realize they're hurting people." The silence that followed was so complete that the soft hum of the chamber's life support systems seemed loud. "Captain," General Kexthar said very gently, "these beings have consumed thousands of worlds. Billions of lives have been lost to them." "I understand that," De Ho replied. "But on Earth we've learned that most conflicts happen because of misunderstandings. Maybe the Devourers don't know there's another way to get what they need." "Another way?" asked the Emperor. "Sure. If they're hungry, maybe we can feed them. If they need resources, maybe we can trade. We won't know until we ask." A delegate that looked like a giant insect began making clicking sounds that the translator identified as incredulous laughter. "Young human, these creatures are not reasonable. They are a force of nature, like a hurricane or an earthquake. Even hurricanes have causes," So Young said, standing up beside her captain. "And most problems have solutions if you're willing to think creatively." Jinne stood up next. "On Earth we've found that even the most dangerous animals are usually just trying to survive. Maybe the Devourers are the same way." "This is madness," muttered the insect delegate. Taejin raised his hand. "If I may, Your Majesty, what do we actually know about Devourer biology? How do their ships work? What do they need to survive?" The Emperor looked around the chamber. "Surprisingly little, actually. Most of our records from the Long War focus on military tactics, not scientific study. Then maybe that's where we start, Hyunwoo suggested. Learn about them first, then figure out how to communicate. The debate that followed was unlike anything the High Council had ever experienced. For 10,000 years, the Empire had approached every crisis with careful planning, ancient wisdom, and established protocols. But the humans kept suggesting things that no one had ever tried. What if we sent them a message in their own language? How do we know they have a language? Everything intelligent has some way of communicating. We just need to figure out what theirs is. What if we offered them empty planets instead of inhabited ones? Empty planets don't have life to consume. Maybe they don't need to consume life. Maybe they just need the energy, and we can provide that in other ways. What if we sent them food instead of fighting them? What kind of food do you give to planet-eating monsters? I don't know, but my grandmother always said you can solve most problems with a good meal and a friendly conversation. Finally, Emperor Zarthul raised his hand for silence. Captain Daeho, he said, you are suggesting that we approach the greatest threat in galactic history with diplomacy and food? Among other things, yes. And you believe this will work? Daeho looked around at the hundreds of delegates staring at him. I don't know if it will work, he admitted, but I know that doing the same things that failed 10,000 years ago probably won't work either. At least our way we might learn something new. The Emperor was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned to General Kexthar. General, how long before the swarm reaches our core systems? At their current rate of advance, approximately 6 months, Your Majesty. And how long would it take to prepare our defenses using traditional methods? At least 8 months for full mobilization. So we cannot stop them with conventional warfare anyway, the Emperor mused. He looked back at the human delegation. Captain, if we were to attempt your unconventional approach, what would you need? Fast ships, communication equipment, and a really good kitchen. Daeho replied without hesitation. A kitchen? Trust me on this one, Your Majesty. Food is a universal language. The Emperor looked around the chamber one more time. Every face he saw reflected the same thing: fear, uncertainty, and the knowledge that their traditional methods had already failed once. Very well, he said finally. Captain Daeho, I am authorizing you to attempt first contact with the Devourer swarm. May the stars help us all. As the High Council dissolved into excited chatter, Mina leaned over to her captain. Daeho, she said quietly, please tell me you have a plan. Of course I have a plan, he replied. What is it? Daeho grinned. We're going to make friends with the scariest things in the galaxy. And how exactly do we do that? Same way we made friends with everyone else, he said. We show up, say hello, and see what happens. That's not really a plan. It's worked. So far. And with that, the newest members of the Zephyrian Empire volunteered to save the galaxy using nothing but courage, curiosity, and what Taijin was already calling the biggest barbecue in galactic history. 3 weeks later, Captain Daeho stood on the bridge of the Determination and stared at the most terrifying sight in the galaxy. The Devourer swarm stretched across space like a living nightmare. Thousands of bioships writhed and pulsed with their own internal light, each one the size of a city. They moved in patterns that seemed almost like breathing, as if the entire swarm was one massive organism. They're beautiful, Jin'e whispered from her science station. Horrible but beautiful. They're also heading straight for us, Mina reported from navigation. Should I change course? No, Daeho said firmly. We came here to talk. Let's talk. The plan, such as it was, had taken 3 weeks to prepare. Taijin had modified their ship's communication systems to broadcast on every possible frequency, while So Young had prepared what she called a universal greeting package, a collection of images, sounds, and mathematical concepts that should be understandable to any intelligent species. Hyunwoo had loaded their computers with every piece of Earth music ever recorded, from classical symphonies to children's songs. His theory was that if the Devourers were intelligent, music might be the key to reaching them. And in the ship's cargo bay, they carried what Taijin proudly called the most ambitious cooking project in galactic history, a solar-powered kitchen, capable of preparing meals for beings they had never met and knew nothing about. Beginning transmission, Hyunwoo announced, broadcasting on all frequencies. This is Captain Daeho of the Earth vessel Determination, Daeho said into his communicator. We represent the Zephyrian Galactic Empire, and we come in peace. We would like to talk. For several minutes, nothing happened. The swarm continued its slow advance toward Imperial space, apparently ignoring the tiny human ship. Then, suddenly, every bioship in the swarm stopped moving. Captain? Mina said nervously. They've stopped. I can see that. Any response to our message? Nothing yet, Hyunwoo replied, but I'm getting some strange readings. It's like they're scanning us. Scanning for what? Unknown. The energy patterns are unlike anything in our databases. Jeannie suddenly looked up from her instruments. Captain, I'm reading massive biological activity from the nearest ships. Heart rates, brain patterns, digestive systems. These aren't just ships, they're alive. We knew that. No, sir, you don't understand. They're not biomechanical. They're completely organic. Those ships are living creatures. Before anyone could respond to this revelation, the largest bioship in the swarm began to move toward them. It was enormous, easily 10 times the size of their vessel. And as it approached, they could see that its surface was covered in what looked like eyes. Incoming transmission, Hyunwoo announced. Put it through. The voice that came through their speakers was like nothing they had ever heard. It was layered, as if dozens of beings were speaking at once, but somehow the words were clear. Small, warm things. You speak to us. Yes, Daeho replied. We want to understand. Why do you consume planets? There was a long pause. When the voice returned, it sounded sad. We hunger, always hunger. Cannot create, only consume. Have forgotten how to make, only know how to take. Jin-A grabbed Daeho's arm. Captain, I don't think they're destroyers. I think they're refugees. Refugees from what? From themselves, she said, studying her readings. Look at these biological scans. Their ships aren't just alive, and they're starving. They've been living in empty space for 10,000 years with no way to produce food. So Young stepped forward. You're hungry, she said into the communicator. But you don't know how to grow food, only how to take it from others. Yes. So hungry. So long. Forgot. The way of making. Only remember. The way of taking. What, if we could teach you? Daeho asked. What if we could show you how to grow food instead of taking it? The silence that followed lasted so long that the humans began to worry they had lost the connection. Then, slowly, the massive bioship began to extend what looked like docking tubes toward the Determination. They want us to come aboard, Mina said. Is that safe? Probably not, Ginny admitted. But if we're right about this, they're not trying to hurt us, they're just desperate. An hour later, Daeho, Ginny, and So Young found themselves inside a living starship, face to face with the leader of the Devourer swarm. The Hive Queen Morgeth was magnificent and terrible at the same time. She was easily 20 feet tall, with translucent skin that showed the flow of strange fluids beneath. Her eyes were like galaxies, deep and full of swirling lights. When she moved, the entire ship seemed to respond to her presence. But what struck the humans most was how tired she looked. You are the small, warm things from the young species, she said, her voice like wind through vast caverns. We're humans, So Young said gently, from a planet called Earth. Earth. We know this name. Our memory singers recall a small blue world, full of life. So much life. You've been to Earth? Long, long ago, when we still knew the way of making. Your world was beautiful. We took nothing. It was enough, just to see. Jeannie stepped forward. Your Majesty, we think we understand. You've been living in empty space for 10,000 years. Your people have forgotten how to create food, so you have to consume entire planets to survive. Yes, we became monsters to live, hate what we must do, but cannot stop, cannot let the children I starve. What if there was another way? So Young asked. There is no other way. We have tried everything. Can only consume. Have you tried barbecue? The Hive Queen's galaxy eyes focused on So Young with sudden intensity. Quay? It's a way of preparing food, So Young explained. We brought some with us. Would you like to try it? What followed was probably the strangest diplomatic dinner in galactic history. Tae-Jin had prepared a feast using ingredients from 17 different worlds, all cooked using techniques from Earth. There were grilled vegetables that glowed with their own inner light, roasted fruits that sang in harmony when cut, and seasoned proteins that changed color as they cooked. But the real breakthrough came when Jin-A showed the Hive Queen how to use Earth spices. You see? Jeannie explained, sprinkling some of Tae-Jin's special seasoning blend onto a piece of grilled space kelp. The secret isn't just the food itself, it's how you combine different elements to create new flavors. The Hive Queen took a careful bite and her entire body began to glow. This is creation, she whispered, taking simple things and making them more than they were. Exactly, So Young said excitedly. Cooking is creation. It's taking raw ingredients and transforming them into something new and wonderful. We had forgotten that such things were possible. Over the next several hours, the humans taught the Hive Queen the basics of agriculture, cooking, and food preservation. They showed her how plants could be grown instead of simply consumed, how flavors could be enhanced instead of just absorbed, and how meals could be shared instead of hoarded. The breakthrough moment came when Tae-Jin demonstrated how to plant seeds. You put the seed in the soil, he explained. Give it water and light, and it grows into something that produces more food than you started with. The Hive Queen stared at the tiny seedling in wonder. It multiplies? Yes. One seed becomes a plant that makes hundreds of seeds. It's like magic that anyone can do. Magic. That makes more instead of less. That's the idea. The Hive Queen was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, she began to change. Her bioship, responding to her emotions, started to transform as well. Walls that had been designed for consumption began reshaping themselves into growing chambers. Organs meant for breaking down consumed matter began converting into systems for cultivation. My children, the Hive Queen said, her voice now filled with something that sounded like hope. We can learn to make again. The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity. The entire Devourer swarm began transforming itself from an army of consumption into a fleet of cultivation. Ships that had been bioweapons became biofarms. Creatures bred for breaking down matter were re-engineered to build up soil and nutrients. Tae-Jin worked around the clock with Devourer bioengineers, showing them how to create sustainable growing systems. Jin-A helped them redesign their ship's ecosystems to support plant and animal life. So Young established the first interspecies cooking schools in galactic history, and Hyunwoo discovered that Devourer bioships made excellent concert halls, leading to the galaxy's first interspecies music festival. The war that everyone had feared never happened. Instead, the Devourer swarm became the Empire's newest agricultural specialists, transforming barren worlds into garden planets and sharing their advanced biotechnology in exchange for knowledge about sustainable living. 6 months later, Emperor Zarthul stood in his palace garden, watching a group of young devourers learn to tend flowers under the supervision of human agricultural experts. Your Majesty, General Kexthar said, approaching with what looked like a smile on his forearmed features. The final reports are in. The former devourer territories are now producing more food than they ever consumed. They're requesting full membership in the Empire. And the humans? The humans, Kexthar said, shaking his head in amazement, have been appointed as the Empire's